The whole of Congress has been evacuated. A number of senior congressional figures are calling this America's Pearl Harbor.
There are few words to describe the depth of this tragedy. It's an attack on the United States that we haven't seen really since Pearl Harbor.
This is comparable to an attack on Pearl Harbor, and it must have the same response, and the people who did it must have the same end as the people who attacked Pearl Harbor. But it isn't just the people who did it, it's the people who make it possible.
These are the governments that harbor those who carry out these attacks.
That harbor or encourage them with their propaganda.
You know, it's like a Pearl Harbor, like a new form of a war, or like a terrible new arm, and we have to take it very seriously.
This is an act of war. When they compare this to Pearl Harbor, I don't think they're wrong in the sense that it's a surprise attack, and I suspect, if we are wise about this, Pearl Harbor brought the American people together and made us recognize we had something we had to deal with. Perhaps this will do the same thing for all of us.
It's clear now, as it was on December 7th, 1941, the United States is at war. The question is with whom?
Senator Dodd earlier today compared this to the equivalent of the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Right, and you know, he said, I don't think that overstates it. We may find out it will understate it.
In this sense, I do think it's like Pearl Harbor, because it's Pearl Harbor that led us all to come together to defend ourselves against the Japanese. I think this is Pearl Harbor in a sense in bringing us now to look at this terrorist issue.
The United States, I don't think, has decided on an option, but if we use the Pearl Harbor analogy, once the United States decides, it will act ruthlessly and effectively and will deal with this terrorist threat to the best of its capability.
And if we find the governments have harbored or supported the terrorists in any way, I think those governments become extremely vulnerable at that point.
You were assessing intelligence, fearing something one day like this might happen in your National Security Council. Is this the doomsday scenario?
Nick, this is about as close to the doomsday scenario as could be contemplated.
So what I want to stress here is that any nation, and this goes for the Taliban and their henchmen in Afghanistan, any nation in the world that harbored anyone associated with this must be treated as though they were part of what is effectively an act of war against the United States. And I repeat this again, any nation that is seen to have harbored or abetted or sheltered any of these people must be treated as co-equally responsible.
Then the next step will have to be a program to attempt to eradicate the source of this and to bring pressure and serious pressure on governments that harbor this kind of organization, and especially governments where we suspect that these organizations are located.
Between the governments that harbor terrorists and our government, other Western governments,
And particularly people that in the past have supported terrorists and given them harbor, a safe harbor, and helped them in some way.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
When the president said we will make no distinction between the terrorists and those who harbor them, I think that's very much the point he was making.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
No distinction would be made between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
We need to put people on notice that if they harbor terrorists, they are going to get it from us.
And we have to make a statement that is so strong that any country that harbors...
The state that harbors them is as responsible as those who commit it.
I think it can go beyond harboring. The president said harbor, but I think those who finance them, those who train them...
That we would make no distinction between those who carried out these deeds and those who harbored them.
What we are seeing now is nothing less than the worst nightmare that one could imagine come to life, probably worse than anyone could have imagined. And I hate to say it this way, but this may be the day that America's luck ran out.